The Galactic Concord had watched humanity for 300 years. To the elder races, humans were like children who had just learned to walk among the stars. They were young. They were small. They were nothing special. The great empires of the galaxy had conquered worlds before humans even discovered fire. They had built weapons that could crack planets in half. They had fought wars that lasted longer than human civilization had existed. And so, when humanity finally joined the galactic community, the elder races smiled at them the way adults smile at children playing dress-up. Humans were polite. They traded fairly. They never raised their voices in the great halls of the Concord. They asked for very little and caused no trouble. The other species found them almost boring. Kevin Park was the human ambassador to the Galactic Concord. He was a quiet man with gentle eyes and a soft voice. He wore simple suits and spoke carefully chosen words. The alien delegates liked him well enough, though they never took him seriously. He was too calm, too agreeable, too easy to ignore. Kevin had served as ambassador for 15 years. In all that time, he had never once threatened anyone. He had never raised his voice. He had never demanded anything. He simply asked, negotiated, and compromised. The other species thought this made humanity weak. They were wrong. Far from the political halls of the Concord, on a small blue-green world called Kepler 442b, 12,000 humans had built a home. The colony was only 20 years old, but it was thriving. There were schools full of children. There were hospitals and parks and small restaurants where families gathered on weekend evenings. There were scientists studying the planet's strange purple forests, and engineers building machines to mine the rare minerals deep underground. The people of Kepler 442b were ordinary. They were teachers and doctors and farmers and mechanics. They had left Earth, seeking a quiet life among the stars. They wanted nothing more than to raise their children in peace. The Vethrani Dominion wanted something else entirely. The Vethrani were an old species, proud and cruel. They had conquered dozens of worlds and believed themselves superior to all other life forms. When their scouts discovered that Kepler 442b contained vast deposits of a rare mineral called ziranium, they did not ask permission. They did not negotiate. They did not even warn the humans living there. They simply sent their warships. The attack came at dawn, local time. Children were eating breakfast. Parents were preparing for work. The colony's small defense satellite detected the Vethrani fleet too late to matter. There were 20 warships against a civilian settlement with no military presence. The Vethrani commander gave no warning. He simply ordered his ships to fire. The orbital bombardment lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, there was nothing left of the colony but smoke and ash and glass. The heat had been so intense that the sand had melted into smooth, black mirrors. 12,000 men, women, and children had been alive 11 minutes ago. Now, there was only silence. Back on the Concord station, Kevin Park was in the middle of a trade negotiation when his assistant, Emily Kim, entered the chamber. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She walked to Kevin and handed him a tablet without saying a word. Kevin looked at the screen. He read the message once, then twice. His face did not change. His hands did not shake. He simply stared at the words, as if they were written in a language he did not understand. The Vethrani delegate across the table noticed the interruption. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes, and he wore the arrogant expression of someone who had never faced consequences for anything in his life. "Ambassador Park," the Vethrani said, his voice dripping with contempt. "I hope this interruption is important. We were discussing tariff rates." Kevin looked up slowly. His eyes met the Vethrani's, and something in his gaze made the alien's 4 eyes blink in sudden uncertainty. "Your people have destroyed our colony on Kepler 442b," Kevin said. His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly flat. 12,000 civilians are dead." The chamber went silent. The other delegates stared. The Vethrani delegate's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "Ah, yes. I received word of that operation this morning. Your people were trespassing on territory we have claimed. The minerals on that world belong to the Dominion. Consider this a lesson in respecting your betters." Kevin said nothing. He simply looked at the Vethrani with those empty, unreadable eyes. "Come now, Ambassador," the Vethrani continued, growing bolder. "Surely you did not expect us to ask permission? You humans are barely out of your cradles. You should be grateful we only destroyed one colony. We could take everything you own, and there is nothing you could do to stop us." Still, Kevin said nothing. The silence stretched on and on, until even the Vethrani began to feel uncomfortable. Finally, Kevin stood. He straightened his jacket with careful, precise movements. He placed the tablet gently on the table, and then he turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. He did not turn around. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke, and his words fell into the silence like stones into still water. "The conquered will receive humanity's formal response within 1 standard week." Then he was gone. The delegates looked at each other in confusion. The Vethrani laughed nervously, but the oldest species in the room, the ones who had seen empires rise and fall, did not laugh. They remembered something the younger races had forgotten. They remembered that the quietest species were often the most dangerous. And they remembered that humanity had never once shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of. For 300 years, humanity had chosen peace. Now someone had taken that choice away from them. The elder races felt a chill run through their ancient bones. They did not know what was coming, but they knew, with terrible certainty, that the galaxy was about to change forever. Admiral David Lee had commanded the United Earth Defense Fleet for 20 years. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. In his long career, he had fought 3 border skirmishes against pirates and smugglers. He had never once ordered an offensive attack. He had never started a war. David had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was its restraint. While other species built weapons of mass destruction, humans built schools and hospitals. While empires conquered and enslaved, humans traded and negotiated. David was proud of this. He had spent his entire life defending a species that chose peace over violence. But now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Prometheus, David felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt rage. Cold, quiet, patient rage. The images from Kepler 442b played on the screen in front of him. The colony, before and after. Green fields turned to black glass. Schools turned to rubble. A playground, twisted and melted, where children had been laughing just hours before. Rachel Cho, director of United Earth Intelligence, stood beside him. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had spent 30 years gathering secrets from across the galaxy. She knew things that would terrify most people. But even she looked shaken. "The Council has authorized full deployment," Rachel said quietly. "No restrictions." David closed his eyes. No restrictions. 3 simple words that meant the end of everything humanity had tried to be. For 300 years, human military doctrine had been simple: defend, protect, and never strike first. Never use more force than necessary. Never become the monsters they feared. No restrictions meant all of that was gone. "Do they understand what they are asking?" David asked. 12,000 dead, David. 4,000 of them were children. The youngest was 3 months old. Her name was Sophie. She was born on the colony, the first baby of the new generation. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. "The Vethrani killed a 3-month-old baby because they wanted some rocks." David opened his eyes. When he looked at the screen again, something had changed in his gaze. The tiredness was gone. The doubt was gone. There was only cold, hard purpose. "Signal all fleet commanders," he said. "Operation Retribution is active. Full deployment. No restrictions." The orders went out across human space, and something extraordinary began to happen. In secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, lights flickered on for the first time in decades. Machines that had been sleeping for a century hummed to life. Workers who had trained for jobs they hoped they would never do reported to their stations. Project Prometheus had been created by paranoid generals 100 years ago. They had looked at the galaxy and seen a universe full of powerful species who might one day decide that humanity was in their way. So they had built weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that humanity had hidden away and prayed would never be needed. The galaxy thought they knew what human ships looked like. Small, practical vessels with adequate weapons and decent shields. Nothing special. Nothing threatening. They were wrong. The ships that emerged from the hidden shipyards were nothing like what the galaxy had seen before. Dreadnoughts twice the size of anything humanity had publicly deployed. Bristling with weapons that had no names in any alien language. Carriers filled with fighters that moved like angry wasps. Battlecruisers with armor so thick that conventional weapons would bounce off like rain. And the weapons themselves were even more terrifying. Gravitational lances that could tear a ship apart at the molecular level. Void torpedoes that created tiny black holes. Electronic warfare systems that could turn an enemy's own computers against them. Humanity had spent 300 years studying the galaxy's weapons and building something better. Something that had been waiting. Sleeping. Hoping to never wake up. Across human space, soldiers reported for duty. These were not the peacekeepers and border guards the galaxy knew. These were warriors, trained in secret, prepared for a war humanity had prayed would never come. They moved with quiet efficiency, checking their weapons, saying goodbye to their families, and boarding their ships without complaint. On the Prometheus, David watched his fleet assemble. 400 ships of the line, plus support vessels and supply ships. It was the largest human fleet ever deployed. Against the Vethrani Dominion's 8,000 warships, it looked almost pathetic. But numbers were not everything. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we are receiving messages from across the Concord. Several species are asking about our intentions. Some are offering to mediate." End quote. "We are receding." David did not look away from the viewport. "Ignore them. Sir, the Concord Council is demanding an explanation. They say military action without approval is a violation of the Charter." Now David turned. His eyes were hard as stone. "Tell the Council that humanity did not ask for this war. Tell them that we gave 300 years of peace and asked only to be left alone. Tell them that the Vethrani murdered 12,000 civilians, including 4,000 children, and the Concord did nothing." He paused. "And tell them that if they try to interfere, they will regret it." The communications officer swallowed hard and turned back to his console. Rachel moved to stand beside David. "The galaxy is afraid," she said. "They have never seen us like this." "Good," David replied. "They should be afraid. They have been treating us like children for 300 years, pushing us around, taking what they want, laughing at our diplomats." He watched as the last ships fell into formation. They forgot something important, Rachel. They forgot that children grow up. And they forgot that the quietest species in the room is often the most dangerous. The fleet was ready. 400 ships against an empire. 400 ships carrying the anger of a species that had finally been pushed too far. David took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee. We are about to do something that humanity has never done before. We are going to war. Not to defend. Not to protect. We are going to war to show the galaxy what happens when you hurt our people." He looked out at the stars, thinking of 12,000 faces he had never met. Today, the Vethrani will learn that humanity is not weak. Today, the galaxy will learn that our kindness was a choice, not a necessity. And today, everyone will learn that there is nothing more dangerous than a peaceful species that has been given a reason to fight. He raised his hand. All ships, jump to Vethrani space. It is time to teach them what wrath really means. The fleet vanished into hyperspace, and the galaxy held its breath. The Vethrani homeworld of Veth Prime was considered the most protected place in the galaxy. 12 massive defense platforms circled the planet, each one capable of destroying a small fleet by itself. 300 orbital stations formed a ring of steel and fire around the world, and 8,000 warships patrolled the system, ready to crush any enemy foolish enough to approach. The Vethrani High Command laughed when they received word that a human fleet was coming. 400 ships? Against 8,000? The humans had clearly lost their minds. This would not be a battle. It would be a slaughter. High Admiral Vex ordered his fleet to form up and prepare for the easiest victory of his career. He imagined the glory he would receive when he destroyed humanity's pitiful armada. Perhaps the Dominion would reward him with another conquered world. Then the human fleet arrived. They came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 400 ships appearing as one. For a moment, the Vethrani commanders stared at their screens in confusion. These did not look like the human ships they had seen before. These ships were bigger, much bigger, and they were covered in weapons that the Vethrani computers could not even identify. Before anyone could react, a human voice filled every communication channel in the system. It was calm and clear, without anger or fear. This is High Commander James Yoon of the United Earth Fleet. This message is for the civilians of Veth Prime. You have 6 standard hours to evacuate to the designated safe zones marked on your emergency systems. We are not here for you. We are here for your government and military. Anyone who remains in military or governmental facilities after the deadline will not receive a second warning. High Admiral Vex laughed out loud. The human commander was actually warning them? Giving civilians time to escape? What kind of foolish, soft-hearted species announced their attacks in advance? Ignore their pathetic threats, Vex ordered. All ships, attack formation, destroy them all. 8,000 Vethrani warships surged forward, confident in their overwhelming numbers. Their weapons charged, their shields activated. They screamed across space toward the tiny human fleet, ready to crush them like insects. What happened next would be remembered for 10,000 years. The human ships did not retreat. They did not scatter. They simply moved. But they moved in ways that should have been impossible. They danced between the Vethrani weapons' fire, like water flowing around rocks. They twisted and turned with a precision that made the Vethrani targeting computers useless. And then they fired back. The first Vethrani ship to die did not explode. It simply came apart. One moment it was a warship. The next it was a cloud of individual atoms floating in space. The gravitational lance had torn it apart at the molecular level, so quickly that the crew never even knew they were dead. The second ship vanished into a tiny black hole that winked out of existence a moment later, taking the ship with it. The third ship turned its weapons on its own fleet, its computers completely taken over by human electronic warfare. In the first 10 minutes, the Vethrani lost 500 ships. In the first hour, they lost 2,000. By the second hour, their formations had collapsed into chaos as captains fled in every direction, desperate to escape the nightmare that had descended upon them. High Admiral Vex watched from his command ship as his fleet was torn apart. He had never seen anything like this. Human weapons were cutting through Vethrani shields, like they were made of paper. Human ships were dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Human pilots were flying with a skill and fury that the Vethrani could not match. How? Vex whispered. How is this possible? He never got an answer. A void torpedo struck his ship, and High Admiral Vex ceased to exist. By the 4th hour, it was over. 8,000 Vethrani warships had been reduced to floating wreckage. The defense platforms were silent. The orbital stations were dark. The mighty fleet that had protected Veth Prime for centuries was gone, and the human fleet had not lost a single ship. But humanity was not finished. Ground shuttles descended through the atmosphere, carrying soldiers in black armor. They moved through the cities with terrifying efficiency. But they were careful. So careful. They did not fire on civilians. They did not destroy homes, or hospitals, or schools. They only targeted military bases and government buildings. Lieutenant Commander Michelle Nam led the assault on the capital. She was a small woman with a calm face and steady hands. Her soldiers followed her without question, trusting her completely. "Commander," her sergeant reported, "we have located the High Council bunker. It is heavily defended. Civilian presence? None. They evacuated during the 6-hour window." Michelle nodded. The humans had given the warning, and the Vethrani civilians had listened. They had fled to the safe zones, leaving their leaders alone in their fortress. "Breach the bunker," Michelle ordered. "Take them alive. They will stand trial for what they did." The bunker's defenses were impressive. Thick walls, heavy weapons, elite guards. They held out for almost 2 hours. It was not enough. When the doors finally fell, Michelle walked into the council chamber to find 12 Vethrani leaders huddled together. They were the rulers of an empire. They had ordered the deaths of billions. They had never imagined that anyone would hold them accountable. Now they looked at this small human woman with her black armor and her calm eyes, and they saw something that terrified them. They saw justice. "You are under arrest," Michelle said simply. "You will be transported to Earth to stand trial for crimes against humanity. You will be given lawyers. You will be allowed to defend yourselves. And when you are found guilty, you will spend the rest of your lives watching the names and faces of everyone you killed scroll across a screen, one by one, until you understand exactly what you did." One of the council members, an old Vethrani with gray scales, spoke in a trembling voice. "Why not just kill us? Why this? This performance?" Michelle looked at him for a long moment. "Because we are not you," she said. "We do not murder. We do not slaughter. We do not destroy. Because we can. We came here to show you that actions have consequences. And we came here to show the galaxy that humanity does not need to become monsters to defeat them." She turned to her soldiers. "Take them away. Gently. They will have a long time to think about what they have done." As the Vethrani leaders were led away in restraints, Michelle looked out the window at the city below. It was intact. The buildings still stood. The streets were empty but undamaged. Tomorrow, the civilians would return to their homes and find them exactly as they had left them. Humanity had come to Veth Prime with enough power to burn the world to ash. Instead, they had surgically removed the cancer and left the body alive. The message was clear. Humanity was not cruel. Humanity was not savage. Humanity was simply very, very good at war. And they had chosen to use that skill for justice instead of revenge. It was, somehow, the most terrifying thing the galaxy had ever seen. Every species in the known galaxy had sent representatives. They filled the vast circular room, thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds, all staring at the same spot. The human delegation's seats had been empty for exactly 1 week. Now, Ambassador Kevin Park walked calmly to his place, sat down, and folded his hands on the table in front of him. He looked exactly the same as he had when he left. Same simple suit. Same gentle expression. Same soft eyes. But something was different. Something in the way he held himself, in the way the light caught his gaze, made every being in the room want to look away. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply waited. Kevin let the silence stretch for a full minute. Then he began to speak, his voice as calm and measured as ever. 7 days ago, the Vethrani Dominion destroyed a human colony on Kepler 442b. 12,000 civilians were killed. 4,000 of them were children. The youngest victim was 3 months old. Her name was Sophie. She had just learned to smile. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Vethrani High Council ordered this attack because they wanted the minerals on our world. They did not ask for them. They did not offer to buy them. They did not even warn us. They simply decided that 12,000 human lives were worth less than some rocks in the ground. Kevin looked slowly around the chamber. Every eye was fixed on him. Many of you knew this was happening. Some of you even approved. You thought humanity was weak. You thought we would cry and complain, and eventually accept our loss. You thought there would be no consequences. His voice hardened just slightly. You were wrong. He pressed a button on his console, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the Vethrani home system. The delegates gasped as they saw the wreckage floating in space. 8,000 warships, reduced to scrap metal, 12 defense platforms, silent and dead. The mightiest military force in the quadrant, utterly destroyed. The Vethrani Dominion's military capability has been neutralized, Kevin continued. Their fleet no longer exists. Their defense network has been dismantled. Their leadership has been captured and will stand trial for crimes against humanity. He changed the display. Now, it showed the cities of Veth Prime. They were intact. Lights glowed in windows. Streets were clean and undamaged. Their civilian population remains unharmed. Their homes, their hospitals, their schools, all untouched. We have stationed peacekeeping forces to maintain order during the transition to a new government. We are providing food, medicine, and reconstruction assistance to ensure that innocent Vethrani do not suffer for the crimes of their leaders. The chamber was absolutely silent. The delegates stared at the images of intact cities, trying to understand what they were seeing. Humanity had possessed the power to destroy everything, and they had chosen not to. Kevin stood up slowly. Let me be absolutely clear about something. For 300 years, humanity has asked only to be left in peace. We joined this concord in good faith. We traded fairly. We honored every agreement. We honored every agreement. We honored every agreement. We never raised our voices. We never threatened anyone. We never started a single conflict. He stepped forward, and several delegates in the front row leaned back instinctively. We did this because we believe in peace. We did this because we believe that all intelligent life has value. We did this because we truly hoped, that we could be friends with every species in this galaxy. His voice dropped lower. Kepler 442b had families. It had children who were learning to read. It had old people who had traveled across the stars to spend their final years in peace. It had doctors and teachers and artists and dreamers. And in 11 minutes, they were all gone. Murdered. Because one species thought they could take what they wanted without consequences. Kevin's eyes moved across the chamber, meeting the gaze of delegate after delegate. None of them could hold his stare. We built our weapons hoping we would never use them. We trained our soldiers praying they would never fight. We developed strategies we wished would remain theoretical forever. We did not want this. We never wanted this. He stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. But we are not weak. We have never been weak. Our kindness was a choice. Our patience was a choice. Our peace was a choice. And when the Vethrani took that choice away from us, they discovered what we are truly capable of. The silence was so complete that the delegates could hear their own hearts beating. So here is humanity's message to the galaxy. We will never strike first. We will never conquer. We will never enslave. We will never destroy a world for profit or pride. We will continue to trade fairly, honor our agreements, and treat every species with respect. His voice became ice. But if you harm our people, if you touch our families, our children, our homes, we will find you. We will come for you. And we will dismantle everything you have built, piece by piece, until there is nothing left but the memory of your mistake. He let the threat hang in the air. The Vethrani thought our kindness meant weakness. They were wrong. Our kindness means that we know exactly how terrible war is, and we choose to avoid it whenever possible. But when war is forced upon us, we do not hold back. We do not show mercy to those who showed none to our children. Kevin walked slowly back to his seat. This session is concluded. Humanity has nothing more to say. He sat down. The chamber remained frozen. Then, slowly, the delegates began to leave. They moved quietly, almost fearfully, like prey animals who had suddenly realized they were sharing a room with a predator. No one spoke to the human delegation. No one even looked at them. Within hours, 17 species had formally requested stronger diplomatic ties with Earth. Within days, the Concord passed unanimous resolutions, guaranteeing human colonial rights. Within weeks, 3 species who had been secretly planning to expand into human territory abandoned their plans completely. The galaxy had changed. The balance of power had shifted, and every species in the known universe had learned a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had simply been waiting, hoping, praying that no one would force them to reveal what they truly were. And now that the secret was out, now that everyone had seen what human wrath looked like, there was only one logical response. Never give them a reason to do it again. As Kevin Park walked out of the chamber, a junior aide from another delegation caught his eye. The young alien was trembling, barely able to speak. "Ambassador," the aide whispered, Are humans going to conquer us all now?" Kevin stopped. He looked at the frightened young being with something like sadness in his eyes. "No," he said gently. "We are going to go home. We are going to mourn our dead. We are going to rebuild our colony. And then, we are going to continue doing exactly what we have always done, trading, exploring, and hoping for peace." He placed a hand briefly on the aide's shoulder. "We never wanted to be feared. We just wanted to be friends. The tragedy is that someone had to die before the galaxy understood that those two things were never mutually exclusive." Then he walked away, leaving the galaxy to contemplate what it had witnessed and what it had learned about the quiet species they had so badly underestimated. The galaxy was a different place now. Wars had become rare. Empires that once conquered without hesitation now thought twice, then 3 times, before raising a weapon. Trade flourished. Diplomacy thrived. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves sitting at the same tables, sharing meals, building futures together, and everyone knew why. The Interstellar Academy stood on a neutral world, halfway between human space and the old Vethrani territories. It was a massive complex of glass and steel, where young beings from every species came to learn together. The classrooms held humans and Vethrani, old enemies now sitting side by side. The dormitories echoed with laughter in 100 different languages. The gardens bloomed with flowers from 1,000 worlds. Professor Andrew Shin stood at the front of his history classroom, looking out at his students. He was an older man now, with gray hair and kind eyes, but his voice was still strong and clear. He had dedicated his life to teaching the next generation about the past, so they could build a better future. "Today," he said, "we are going to talk about the Kepler incident." A ripple of interest passed through the class. Everyone knew the story, of course. It was taught in every school, on every world. But hearing it from Professor Shin was different. He had a way of making history feel alive. "Most people misunderstand what happened 50 years ago," Andrew began. "They see it as humanity's moment of savagery. They think it proves that humans are just as violent as any other species, perhaps more so. They point to the destroyed fleet, the captured leaders, the overwhelming display of force." He pulled up an image on the classroom display. It showed a simple memorial, a wall of black stone on Kepler 442b, covered in names. 12,000 names, carved into the rock, so they would never be forgotten. But that interpretation misses the point entirely. He walked slowly between the desks, looking at each student in turn. Humanity did not seek revenge. They sought justice. There is a difference. Revenge is blind. Revenge destroys everything it touches. Revenge does not care about innocent lives or future peace. It only cares about making someone pay. He stopped at the window, looking out at the garden where human and Vethrani children were playing together. Justice is different. Justice sees the guilty and the innocent. Justice punishes those who deserve punishment and protects those who deserve protection. Justice looks toward the future, not just the past. No, he turned back to his students. When humanity came to Veth Prime, they had enough firepower to turn the planet into another Kepler 442b. They could have glassed every city, killed every civilian, ended the Vethrani species entirely. The galaxy would have understood. After what was done to their people, no one would have blamed them. His voice softened, but they did not do that. They warned the civilians. They gave them time to evacuate. They struck only military and government targets. They captured the leaders alive so they could face trial. And when the fighting was over, they helped rebuild what they had destroyed. A young Vethrani student raised her hand. She was small, with pale gray scales and nervous eyes. Andrew nodded at her. Professor Shin. My grandmother was a child during the invasion. She told me that the human soldiers gave her food when she was hiding in a shelter. She said they found her crying and they did not hurt her. They just gave her food and told her everything would be okay. The student's voice trembled. She never understood why they were kind to her. Her people had killed their children, and they were kind to her. Andrew smiled gently. That is exactly the point. Humanity was not fighting the Vethrani people. They were fighting to send a message that attacking innocent humans would never go unpunished. Once that message was delivered, the violence stopped. They had no interest in making more orphans or more widows. They just wanted the killing to end. He changed the display to show a graph. It tracked interstellar conflicts over the past century. After the Kepler incident, the line dropped sharply and stayed low. In the 50 years since Kepler, there has been a 94% reduction in military conflicts across the galaxy. Species that used to attack each other without hesitation now negotiate. Empires that once conquered freely now respect borders. The galaxy is more peaceful today than it has been in recorded history. He looked at his students with pride, not because humanity threatened everyone into submission, but because humanity demonstrated something the galaxy had never seen before. They showed that it was possible to be both terrifyingly powerful and genuinely merciful. They showed that strength and compassion were not opposites, but partners. A human student spoke up. Professor, do you think it could happen again? If someone attacked us now, would we do the same thing? Andrew considered the question carefully. He thought about the hidden shipyards that still existed, maintained by crews who hoped their work would never be needed. He thought about the soldiers who still trained, year after year, preparing for wars they prayed would never come. He thought about the weapons that still waited in the darkness, sleeping but never forgotten. Humanity spent centuries building weapons they hoped would rust, he said finally. They trained warriors they prayed would never fight. They developed strategies they wished would remain theoretical, and when they were forced to use all of it, they did so with precision, with restraint, and with purpose. Then they immediately returned to peace. He paused. Could they do it again? Without question. The ships are still there. The soldiers are still ready. The weapons are still waiting. Humanity has not forgotten how to fight. They simply choose not to. He walked back to the front of the classroom. But here is the lesson I want you to take from today. The best way to ensure that humanity never has to unleash its wrath again is simply to give them no reason to. Leave their families in peace. Honor your agreements. Treat them with the same respect they offer you. He smiled at his mixed classroom of humans, Vethrani, and dozens of other species. Humanity did not want to be feared. They wanted to be friends. The tragedy of Kepler was that 12,000 people had to die before the galaxy understood that those two things were never opposites. You can be a friend to humanity. You can be their partner, their ally, their family. All you have to do is show them the same kindness they show you. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. The students began to gather their things, but no one rushed out. They moved slowly, thoughtfully, considering what they had learned. The young Vethrani student lingered after the others had left. She approached Professor Shin with hesitation. "Professor?" My grandmother said something else. She said that when the human soldier gave her food, he was crying. She asked him why, and he said he had a daughter her age back on Earth. He said he kept thinking about what he would want someone to do for his daughter if she was scared and alone. Andrew felt tears prick at his own eyes. "That," he said softly, "is who humanity really is. Not the warships, not the weapons, not the terrible power that broke the Vethrani fleet. Just people, parents and children, families who love each other. Beings who feel pain when others suffer, even when those others are supposed to be enemies." He placed a gentle hand on the student's shoulder. "Your grandmother was saved by humanity's true nature, not their capacity for war, but their capacity for love. That is the legacy of Kepler. That is what I hope you will remember." The student nodded and left. Andrew stood alone in the empty classroom, looking out at the garden where children of all species played together under a peaceful sky. Somewhere out there, in hidden places that most people had forgotten, the sleeping giants still waited. The ships and weapons and soldiers who had broken an empire in a single week. They waited and watched and hoped, as they always had, that they would never be needed again. And in the garden below, a human child and a Vethrani child sat together, sharing lunch, laughing at some joke that only children understand. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's wrath. It had broken in terror, but it was humanity's mercy that had put it back together, stronger and more beautiful than before. That was the legacy that would last forever.